Kefir, kefir, kefir. However you pronounce it, that is what I'm talking about today. One of the problems that people experience with kefir is that it doesn't come out thick enough. And if this is you, I'm going to tell you why this often happens. Hi there, my name is Sue. Welcome to my channel if you've not been here before. I talk about all sorts of things to do with the carnivore diet and health, and fermented foods is one of my favourite topics. So I've been making kefir for years. I probably made my first batch about 20 years ago, I think. So I've eaten it off and on over the years. I've had long periods of time where I haven't eaten it, but I am currently consuming kefir again and have been off and on for the last 3 years since I've been eating a carnivore diet. Now, one of the problems that people experience with kefir is that it doesn't come out thick enough. And if this is you, I'm going to tell you why this often happens. So it can just be that it doesn't really like the milk that you're using, especially ultra pasteurized milks. I use beautiful A2 raw milk that I get from a farm about half an hour away, and it makes fantastic kefir. But it'll still come out a bit runny depending on the temperature, basically. I've made kefir when we lived in Queensland in Australia, and I've made it here. Where I'm living at the moment, the temperature in the summer can be 28, 30 degrees, but in the winter it's quite a lot colder. And so what I find is that in the summer, I can leave my kefir on the bench to ferment, and it'll take 12 to 16 hours and it's done. And it works really well. In the winter, whole different story. Now, I haven't made any kefir this winter up until the last probably few weeks. And so my husband and I are both consuming it at the moment. He's never been a fan historically, but he actually really likes it now. So we're both having about a cup of kefir a day. I'm still working on my gut health. I'm doing a version of the GAPS diet. And so that's why I'm back consuming this. And so what I found was that when I started making my kefir, leaving it on the bench, it was just taking a ridiculous amount of time. It was taking probably at least 36 hours, maybe longer, to ferment it to where it should be. So then I started putting it into our hot water cupboard. So here in New Zealand, it's really common for houses to have a hot water cupboard, which is a cupboard where our hot water cylinder is. So that stays a little bit warmer. So I was putting it in there, but it was still taking over 24 hours. And now, if this is a problem, you could heat your milk up to start with, but you would want to make sure that you don't heat it too hot, because otherwise you're going to kill your kefir grains. You would want to use a thermometer to do that, and I probably wouldn't go above body temperature, 37 degrees Celsius. I've never done that, but it would be an option. So my milk is coming directly out of the fridge and it's freezing cold. So that would be an option that would speed it up a little bit. Do not sit your kefir in direct sunshine. Do not put it next to the fireplace where it's really hot. You will kill your kefir grains. You need to have the right temperatures. It'll ferment in cold temperatures, but slowly, up to about 28, 30 degrees from my understanding. So I've come up with a solution that's working really well for me. When you're making your kefir, you want to get it to, I don't know whether you can see that. Can you see that has split? There's whey, that was my dishwasher. There's whey in there and curds. Now you want to get it at least to this kind of stage, if not further. Ideally, if you want it to be really thick, you want it to be really clear whey in the jar and curds with quite a definite separation. Now, what I've been doing is I've actually been putting it into my Lavelli yogurt maker. So I have a Lavelli yogurt maker that I bought to make SIBO yogurt and our Watery yogurt. I've also used it to ferment berries and different things like that. So I decided to try it with the kefir, and I've been experimenting to see what temperature it likes. And what I've settled on at the moment that I've been using is 28 degrees Celsius for 24 hours. Seems to do quite a good job. It could be fermented a little bit longer than that. So it could even go up to 28 hours or something like that. But I've just been doing it 24 hours, and that pretty much gets it from freezing cold milk to this. Now, if the milk was warmer, it obviously would be fermented more in that 24 hours, and it would be absolutely perfect. So when you go to strain your kefir, once it is actually separated, if it's separated into curds and whey, then you have the option, if you want to, of straining off some of that whey. Now, if you strain off some or all of the whey, You can pop that into another jar, keep it in the fridge and use it for different things. So this is some whey that I have in the fridge from yesterday that I separated. I've used it just recently as a starter for some beetroot kvass that I'm making. I had no kefir in the fridge this morning, so I just had a small glass full of whey first thing in the morning because I'm having a probiotic food every morning first thing. So I just had some of the whey. It actually tastes quite nice. You can use it for starting other ferments if you're making sauerkraut or kimchi or things like that. You can use it for marinating meat in. You can feed it to your pets. It'll help to make them really healthy. Or if you end up with too much, it can always go in the compost. There's lots of different things that you can use whey for. You can even use it in your hair as a conditioner for your hair. It works really well for hair and for skin because the pH is really good for hair and skin. So, it's a fantastic product to have on hand. If you want to do that, you can separate your whey from the curds, and then when you put the curds into the fridge, they will be a whole lot thicker. And if you leave them in the fridge for a day or two, then they'll thicken up even more. But what I find is once it gets to a separated stage, even if I leave the whey in there, it comes out much thicker and creamier than it will if it hasn't actually separated. So I'm just going to strain this off so that you can see where this is at this stage, okay? As I said, if you let it separate more, then it will be thicker. All right, so I have a Pyrex jug here. I have a little plastic sieve that I use for my kefir. Kefir grains do not like metal. So if you're sieving them through a metal strainer, that can also be a reason why your kefir may not be turning out the way you expect. And it can also be a reason why your grains aren't multiplying and growing the way that they should be. So try to buy a plastic strainer of some sort. And then I also use this little silicone spatula. It's a really handy one for doing my kefir. I love it for this. So what I do is I just pour this through my strainer. You can see in there that it's quite thick on the top there. The cream always goes up to the top because I'm using a whole milk that is not homogenized. It's a raw milk. So the cream separates and it tends to go up to the top of the kefir, but then it mixes through once I strain it. So what I do is I just pour it into the strainer. And then I just stir it around and help to push that through the strainer. This is mixing the whey and the curds together, and it'll leave the kefir grains behind. If you are wanting to separate your whey, the more split your whey and curds are, the easier it's going to be to just pour the whey out of the jar. And the easiest ways to do that is either just to pour it into some cheesecloth over a strainer and just let it drip through, or you can use a large spatula and just try and hold the curds back while the whey comes out of the jar. All right, so I'm just going to carry on pushing this through, and then I'll let you see how thick this is once it's done. So I'm at the point now where there's pretty much just kefir grains left in my strainer. As you can see, that is quite thick, and that's with it being warm. It'll continue to ferment slowly in the fridge, and so if I was to leave that in the fridge for a couple of days, it will thicken up more. Now, as I said, if you want to separate the whey and the curds, then that'll make it even thicker. And also, if it was fermented for longer, it would make it thicker. Now, the other thing that I just thought of is if you're just getting started, or if you're not using enough kefir grains, that is another reason why your yogurt might be taking longer to ferment and just not thickening up as much as you might like it to. You want to have a reasonable amount of kefir grains in your batches, and that just comes with experience. They will multiply. When you first get your kefir grains, you might only have a small amount, and then gradually they'll multiply as you make each batch. And so I tend to keep a reasonable amount of grains in my batches of kefir just because it helps them to ferment more quickly. And I will probably put close to all of these kefir grains into my new jar. These jars that I use hold about 600 mils. They're quite good sized jars. And just pop that one in the sink. And so I will probably use most of these grains in this jar. There's a little small amount that I'm going to get rid of, probably maybe a tablespoon, but the rest I'm keeping in the jar. So that's, I don't know if you can see there how much kefir grains I'm putting in the bottom of the jar. And that's just come through experience. That's just what I do, and it works for me. So if you're struggling to ferment your kefir fast enough in the winter, if you're living somewhere cold, I can't recommend highly enough the Lavelli yogurt maker. So as you can see, I've got mine here. It's got another jar of kefir in there. And as I said, I've been setting it at 28 degrees Celsius for 24 hours, and it ferments the kefir beautifully. And it's also really handy for other things. You can, for making your yogurt in particular, that's what I bought it for. The temperature range is quite good on the Lavelli yogurt maker. It comes with a big 2-litre container that you can use as well, and it's great for fermenting all sorts of things. So I'll pop a link to the Lavelli yogurt maker below the video if you want to go and check those out. Really worthwhile investment in my view. If you've got any comments or questions, pop those below the video and I'll get to them as soon as I can. I thank you very much for watching, and I will talk to you again another day. Goodbye for now.